I am going to start over. I'm not going to do the music again, but
There we are.
there we go. Well, very good. Welcome to the Zoom Test Kitchen. I'm Jeff Widgren, your host, and we meet here commonly every Friday afternoon at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Every once in a while there's a miss, but we get it most of the time. Been doing it for like 3 years. We live stream to our YouTube channel. You can find us at Zoom Test Kitchen on YouTube. You can also find Zoom Test Kitchen on Discord, where we've got some brainiacs sharing information and asking questions and solving problems and so forth. So, and you can find us on LinkedIn as well. So anyways, it's not the only thing I do. I'm involved in virtual productions for a long time now. It feels like 3 years is a long time. Live events as well, because those are back, and commonly when I'm involved, it's a hybrid because I'm there for the stream and the Zoom and so forth. But outside of that, I took on a new role that Ray's poking at right now, coming out of the air to come do the Zoom Test Kitchen, is that I'm a new camera operator. And they call it an airborne camera operator in our local news chopper, Channel 9. So that'll be kind of a fun thing. Not flying all day every day. It's pretty much on demand or on schedule based on what the news desk wants to capture. Greg Gibson said it best. He says, "Oh boy, you're now part of the mainstream media." I'm like, oh my gosh, I never even thought about that. I just thought about how cool this role is going to be. But anyways, I was out there all day today till I left to come get ready. I was a little stressed at the beginning, but I do want, there's a new logo behind me. If I lean out of lean the other way, it almost went in focus. Come on. Go there. Kind of. It's bouncing there. Real Picture Live, realpicture.live TV is our new sponsor for this enterprise Zoom account that they so graciously have allowed us to use for the high definition experience, a lot of the enterprise, features and so forth. And for those involved in and around office hours, you'll be familiar with Greg Gibson. Greg Gibson is behind realpicture.live TV, and he graciously has lent us an account for the Zoom Test Kitchen, and that is from the unfortunate circumstances that our friends at the DVE store had to close things down, and that Zoom account has changed and so forth. So needless to say, we thank Greg for that, and really thank Guy Cochran for all of his support and generosity through the years as well, supporting us up to this. And so we still have a great experience as far as, are you guys getting me in 1080? That's always a question. We haven't dove into that lately, but I am sending 1080. I can see that. So you guys should be receiving 1080 if you're on devices that can support that. Quick note, somebody joins with a mobile device, that maximum 1080 will drop to 720 in a meeting. And that same behavior happens in webinar as we know it, with the exception of if you enable HD, and I don't remember exactly the verbiage, but force that HD to all attendees. Then instead of it making the decision that says, hey, there's a mobile device and meeting, we have to drop everybody's maximum to 720 in the webinar with that extra option chosen. It will say, hey, there's a mobile device that can't handle 1080. We're going to drop you mobile device down to 360 and leave everybody else at their premium experience as well. So to know it is just simply to know it. You don't get frustrated. You just know what the results will be. And if your expectations align with the results, that's always a good day. Otherwise, we get upset and we start posting messages and so forth. So anyways, good to be back. Robert, how are you?
I'm doing well, thanks, Jeff. Very tired. Have had a heavy week, just like you have.
And I was just about to say that 1080p with losing it when someone comes in on a mobile device. This is something that I learned here at the Zoom Test Kitchen, nowhere else.
Thank you. Yeah, it's just, and that doesn't mean it came from me necessarily. I mean, the first person I learned all those ins and outs from was Sam Kakaiko at Zoom. And, he's been a guest several times, and Andy has, really reinforced that behavior, the understanding of that behavior. And so it works well. Knowledge is power. It's one of those things that our wishes are much, much simpler than the requirements of all the bandwidth consumption it would take, and then it would create latency. And, I mean, we have to be careful what we wish for, and just trust in this case that Zoom has already, evaluated all those different formulas and outcomes and so forth, and come up with, kind of best performance, lowest latency, and so forth on our behalf. So often is the case. It really is. I know I've been a little angst on a few things, and when I really kind of learned the ins and outs and, things they were up against and so forth, it really makes a big difference in understanding it all. David Paskin, how are you, sir?
I am okay, but I screwed up one of my buttons, and so now my mute button is backwards. I had this great idea, but now it says that it's muted.
That's the power of toggle. I don't know if that's really what you're dealing with or not, but toggle.
No.
I don't use toggle, but it's because you don't know. I mean, when you push a button that's programmed to toggle, it's going to toggle from its current state. So you don't really know, is it starting in the off position or starting in the on position? And so I do things explicitly, if you will. And Companion 3.0 has like doing things explicitly like that with a mute on, mute off, for instance. Well, if David used, and he already said that's not his problem, so that's not what I'm trying to drive at. But if David used toggle, his consumption would be one button in Companion and on the Stream Deck. My explicit practice would commonly be two buttons, mute on and mute off, right? Because they're explicit. But now Companion 3.0, which is in release candidate 1 stage right now, which is inching closer and closer to a full release, they've gone to well, even prior to 3.0, I should say, you could do a latch, and you could press it once to be muted on, and press it again to be muted off. In 3.0, they removed the latch and gave us much more flexibility by being able to add steps. And so for every button, we can have step 1, step 2, step 3, and so forth. So you can push a button multiple times. Initially, if it's that first time you've ever heard of that, you might go, I have no idea when I would ever use that. And that's exactly what I said when I first saw those steps. And then I ended up, I think it was when I was setting up some buttons for like breakout room configuration. And some of the questions are, how long do you want the breakout rooms to stay open? When do you want them to auto close? Things like that. And you want it to you go from 0, it displays 0, press it once, it goes to 15 minutes, press it again, it goes to 30 minutes, press it again, it goes to 60 minutes, and so forth. So it's like a dial or a scroller, if you will, and those can be done in steps as well. So you'll pretty quickly find some really, really good uses for that.
Are you on 3.0 now? Are you running this one?
I downloaded the very latest experimental version before we started today. So that is 3.0 59 build 5920 is what I'm running on right now. And I'll throw out the words of warning. So I downloaded that today. Now it's been a little while since I've been in Companion, building out panels, things like that. And I haven't been in the kitchen for 2 weeks as well. So that's like 3 weeks of being away from the panel, stuff that I had built. When I imported my last export, which is like a backup, some of the stuff didn't work. That's why a couple of you who were here early could probably feel a little bit of my panic and the screen flashing, because I was like reprogramming buttons. Some of the stuff, like my start show, go live, and end show, just kind of press and the music starts and press and I go live, and those are actually running scripts in vMix. But and those don't break. Once you've got them, they're there. But the buttons, like start show, start pre-show, literally was trying to do like a spotlight. I'm going, where in the world did that come from? So things like they get like misaligned or something every once in a while between these, builds. So, don't do like me and download the latest build right before you have to, start a show or an event, because there's a decent chance, I would say it's less than 50% chance. I haven't actually had that experience for quite a while, and I've been, going through these builds progressively like David, but it can happen. And so make sure you do it, at least the day before, and then go through every single button and make sure all the actions are intact and, functional and the whole bit. Right?
What kind of a migrating problem am I going to have going from 2.4, which is what I run now?
Yeah.
Am I just going to have to throw everything out?
No, you won't have to throw everything out, but I'm gonna try not to sound like an authoritative answer on that right now either, because when I first migrated, my 2.4, which were, some ZoomOSC and ISO panels and vMix, nothing, hardly anything came across useful. I tend to believe that has probably been much improved at this point, but at the same time, it really depends on what modules you're using. vMix has been pretty aggressively building itself to be 3.0 compatible, and it's pretty rich. And I really appreciate their build for 3.0. They've added some a lot more useful descriptions of what their actions do, and that's super helpful. And like the latest build that I have today, all of a sudden, here, let me see if I can share this real quick. On my Companion, David, you might say you've seen this for a while now. I don't know. I hadn't updated, but
all the little icons around.
Yeah.
I saw them for the first time today.
Yeah. So I had submitted kind of this dream of being able to, the fact is you just can't see, hang on. Ray, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing. Oh, you know what? I can do this a different way, and then I can really make it visible.
There, I got mine up and it's bigger.
Are you sure about that, David?
Now, boys.
This isn't a competition, David.
I am a man of the cloth. What are you doing?
We all heard it. You'll have to play that back and hear just how clear that was.
Man, we're streaming this live, right?
That
Fantastic.
Was funny. That was
perfect.
Funny. Hey, man, it's a good, fun, relaxed show. Yeah, so I put this dream out. It's like the limitation first. The whole reason I submitted this, thought was that you can put text on a button in Companion. You can add a PNG on a button. That can even be transparent, which can be super helpful. But you can't put more than one PNG, even if, let's say the microphone is red and the speaker is bluish, turquoise-ish, and the camera on the bottom left corner there is a kind of a pinkish purple. If those were 3 separate PNGs, and based on the state of one of them, you said, oh, here's the mic, and oh, now add the speaker or add the camera, one would replace the other, no matter where the pixels were laid out. It's like the pixels, it just couldn't handle more than a single PNG. So, I mean, like almost the moment, I mean, the developers are great. Jeffrey is the primary developer, and and James was a big help on this one as well. Like they immediately respond as like, we think we can do that. And so anyways, it does take the creation, because the limitation of a single PNG is still real. And so there's like 16 PNGs, I think, to create every combination of, a muted mic with the camera on, an unmuted mic with the camera on, an unmuted mic with the camera off. It's all those combinations of states, but it does give you a look at multiple devices states, which are critical, right? The video, is the camera on or off? So if I turn my camera off for a second, you should see a shift. That's me. I'm not seeing a color change happen. There should be something that occurs.
I think no, Jeff.
Yeah.
No, I guess I'm wrong. Forget it. Sorry. I was going to say, because I'm technically not in this meeting as a co-host, this account. So I wonder if that's a piece of it.
No, it changed.
Yeah. You came
it changed.
In. It did?
Yeah. When I talked, my mic went on.
You guys still there?
We're all still here.
We're all still here.
It just went really quiet while you were talking and muted yourself, so I couldn't tell if I lost the ability to hear you or it was your mic. So I need to talk to James and look at and see this. It's appearing that if I take Jeff and so if it's unmuted, the mic shows up. If it's not, or if it is muted, the mic is on. So if you see it, the device is on. And then if I do that with the camera, camera. So left side is microphone and camera. If you have a speaker who's queued up and you're bringing on stage here shortly, and you see the 2 icons on the left side, the mic and the camera, they're live, they're ready to roll. I'm not sure what the speaker one is.
Could that be? Wow, that really is weird. When I start speaking, I wonder if that's about active speaker. So if two of us were speaking at the same time, maybe it would show who's the active
You and I
speaker.
are bouncing back and forth on my screen right now. Yeah, perfect. So active speaker is exactly that. Very good. So
is there a fourth corner?
Yeah, I don't.
I wonder if that's screen share.
I don't know.
Let me fire up a screen share.
So the implementation of this is not granular, if you will. So if you now add a gallery-based feedback, did you see anything come up on that fourth icon? Yeah.
No, and I just checked screen share. That didn't trigger anything either.
On my let's see if I can get over here to my Mac. Where did mine go? Okay, that's the gallery. I don't want that. I want this. Maybe that's not quite big enough. But
Jeff, that's the space for raised hand. I've just raised my hand and it's come up.
That makes sense. Perfect.
There it is.
Good find.
Good catch. Thank you.
So since this was the first time that I saw this because of this upgrade and my build, you can see on the right side here that my my build had multiple feedback actions, right? Because we used to have to do them independently and then choose the drop down for the mic and the drop down for the video and the drop down for. So now I haven't fixed that. This is how fresh this is to me. I'm just seeing it. There's multiple entries that are completely duplicated now because you just need to give it the gallery position and it will manage all of this state on its own. There's a part of me that likes that, and then there's a part of me that instantly misses the granularity of control because this feedback absolutely destroys my panel build that that I've built in other stuff. So let me go here to if I can find it. Is it this one? Nope. That consumer panel that I had built, I thought it was here, but maybe it's not. There, it's on 30. Yeah, there it is. So, and this isn't even a good example of it because, yeah, this is really early old build. Anyways, you guys who have seen this before, you know, I have the graphic headers here. I mean, this build's falling apart here, but I don't want to reload the profile. But you can see, you know, like if these icons in the top left, top right, bottom left, bottom right were placed on like button number 11, that to me, it's just not going to work. Graphically, it just, you know, kind of destroys the cosmetic value of the build and so forth. And so there's a part of me that will wish, and I'll let it be known that, you know, and there will probably come a day when multiple PNGs are supported, and, you know, it may just be that I have to wait. But but do I, you know, what I'll have to do is find out, I mean, like on the consumer build, I'll have to remove that feedback altogether if I don't want these icons to stomp all over my graphical design. And but that doesn't mean I want to give up the ability to have status on mic and camera and hand raised and so forth. So, but
Jeff, when I was building these out, I early on I realized that for me, I can do graphical designs for all of my buttons except for the participant buttons. Those I just need to leave them alone, and so you know, let the name be prominent. Now let the name. I mean, for me, honestly, and I'm old, but reading the names on top of all those graphical items is really difficult. What I'd love to see is maybe put all of those icons in a row along the bottom, even make them a touch smaller if you need, and then let the name be on top. You're
reading my mind. I mean, and I actually, part of my dream submission included that kind of across the bottom. And so that one, you'd still have to build, you know, all the combinations, right, of these, but they're just pulling one dynamically. And so, but if you did it across the bottom and you did it, you know, you go a microphone, you see a mic or you don't. It's on or it's off, right? You see a camera or you don't. It's on or it's off. Same thing, hand raised and so forth. And if those were all transparent PNGs, bingo, baby, across the bottom, that would be beautiful to me. Maybe I'd want the mic to be green, and I don't know. I'm not really stuck on having to have the colors because I can control the background color and have it, you know, blend and still be iconically very helpful. I know where James is coming from is he had tried something similar to that, and he just mentally in a live event, he couldn't get like an instant, like registered in his mind, they're good to go versus they're not. There was his eyes were like chasing, you know, things and so forth. So I think we can, you know,
just to comment on that, Jeff, I've been looking at it from a UX point of view. Personally, I don't think I would need to have icons on them, because if it was color coded that red is mic, purple is camera, and the speaker comes on with the green, and the hand raised is something. The hand raised would probably stay there because it's there already. But I don't personally, I don't like those icons because they're covering too much space on this on the button.
So do you mean keep colors in the four corners, but just lose the icons?
No,
or do you mean the whole button? Because the problem with the whole button changing colors is then you can't see mic on, camera off, camera on, mic off.
No, I would put force status like traffic lights at the bottom of the button would just come on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So if I have a red dot, like the top right-hand corner, you've got that red dot there. If I saw a red dot in the bottom left-hand corner, I would know the mic's on. A purple dot, I'd know that the camera's on.
Yeah.
I from a UX point of view, the icon itself does not provide that much information that I need it to be different from just a color indicator.
Yeah.
I love the traffic light kind of thinking there. That makes a lot of, but a horizontal traffic light. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So my feedback would be the active speaker, like right now it's a transparent, and it's either the same color. What color is your, like, you can see mine because I'm sharing it out, but what color is your speaker? Does that have a background color that just happens to match the background color of my button? It is, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of this bluish.
So it does have that kind of teal background. So I was thinking it was transparent because it's almost a perfect match to my button on this panel. But if they were transparent, I like the speaker because it's kind of, I might try, but it takes up more room. It kind of like a bullhorn, just a little bit of a bullhorn that says that, but a transparent, white icon only. The microphone, I would be good with. That webcam, that mentally doesn't register as a camera to me. I always kind of like the profile of, the old camera with the lens, hood, something like that is there. But, and the only reason I would try to stick to icons, Robert, and I'm not trying to convince you anything differently, is a day one operator, in churches and so forth, a day one operator. Color coding would absolutely be a 100% learn from the documentation type training versus the potential of them going, oh, that makes perfect sense. Microphone, it's a camera, like their mic's on, their camera's on, and they're the active speaker and their hand is raised. I don't know if I would love having a small hand, icon, because I'm so used to kind of this, full skin toned hand. But I might be able to adapt, I guess. But the other part, I guess, what I haven't said yet is, on this build, it has told me the old method is gone right now. So I can't do it the old way because the new way is in place. And I guess my vote would be serve both users, because these background colors are a deal killer for me, for sure. And even the position of them. I mean, I would definitely favor across the bottom because most of my dynamic text, like length of people's names and stuff, are all from top to bottom, and it would be less likely for that text to finally hit those icons than it is guaranteed to hit it right now, being in every corner of the button. So yeah, just tweaks. And I feel bad, James, if you're listening. I am not picking on you, man. You have done a fantastic job of figuring out and applying the logic that it takes to make this happen. But maybe we could have the recipe of the images, like the 16 images, which name, what file name represents what icon and icon combination. If we could replace those 16 graphics with ours, that would be phenomenal. And if that's, you know, already possible, that would be even better. But but it's a fantastic start. But getting like I've lost the usefulness of all my old, you know, raised hands and this and that, and as far as I can tell, it's not even available. So I don't exactly, you know, I'm not in love with the extraction of a prior investment of a panel build on that. So that's probably the biggest consequence. Anyways, that's some of the fresh stuff. What's on your guys' mind? What's new in your world of, you know, event or meeting management or whatnot, or features that you want to kind of bring out on the talk table?
Well, I can talk about myself for a second, if that's okay, Jeff.
Sure.
I'm seeing a lot of new requirements for ISO recording. And even when I'm not managing events, people are coming to me and asking if you can ISO record. And that's been a change. There seems to be a trend or a requirement to prepare post-production films, shorts, summaries, that wasn't as popular as it used to be during the pandemic. This is something that's come out now, especially with hybrids, where you've got good quality feeds from good quality cameras that you can record in good quality if you've got the equipment. And what I'm seeing is that a lot of the people who are doing these hybrids don't have the capabilities to do the ISO recordings in a sensible way. It seems so easy because you can just stick an SSD drive into an ATEM ISO extreme, but it seems that when they're on meetings, they're not. So I have spent some time now, and I've just got a new Mac Mini 2 Pro in to get the 8 feeds in, just to do that part of the business. And one of the things that I've discovered was that I was struggling with recording. And I had a big, long discussion with Mike Lattis about 3-4 weeks ago. Hi, Mike. And been testing all of these different recording platforms using NDI. And now I'm about to test recording over SRT, which is available over ZoomISO now. And just get those feeds out of the Zoom meeting, put them via SRT so that it doesn't just bog the network down, and try the recordings of those. And the challenge has been to find a good recorder without having a physical machine, but just doing it with software. And I've tested 3 programs so far. One, of course, was vMix, which I talked about on one of the previous Zoom test kitchens. The other one was Magic Soft Recorder, which is a broadcast quality recorder. And the third one, Andy actually recommended. It's called LiveMind Recorder, which is really clever because it's available for Windows and Mac. So it.
And where is its source? What is it recording? Is it recording out of Zoom, or what's its source that's feeding those ISO records?
ZoomISO. I'm running ZoomISO on a Mac. Well, I've just got the Mac Mini, my Mac Mini Pro M2 now, and I'm going to be starting to play with that next week. But that's going to be the source, and I want to use my old Mac Mini as the recorder, and using the Thunderbolt as a local SSD very fast drive. Even though I have tested these with a NAS, But the trouble with using a NAS is that you're pulling the streams in and you're also pushing that stuff through the same network back to the NAS. So it's a lot cleverer to record it locally on a quick SSD. So I've been trying to play with those recently, and I will come back and share that with you. But that's something that I've been working on apart from other production work.
Yeah. So, I mean, as we know it today, best res out of Zoom is, I mean, the moment you're getting it from Zoom, the best you're going to get is 1080/30, right? And but what Zoom is working on is double-ended recording as well, and I have the sense that will help solve a lot of these issues, because, and this is a huge assumption on my part, because right now, if somebody was sitting in front of a 4K camera, but by the time you see it in Zoom, it's 1080 at best based on the licensing, right? And so it steps it down. But what if the customer really wanted that original, high definition source? You could tell them to put in a memory card in their camera and do that. But some cameras have 30-minute limits when you start. Let's say the same cameras that have 30-minute limits based on recording are the same cameras that you can, like I'm using right now. I mean, I would probably have, if I were recording on the camera, I'd probably have a timeout limit, but I don't. It's not even doing anything. It's just on, right? And it's just giving me an HDMI output, and those are unlimited and they're high end. So there's that possibility of a challenge. But say they do a local record, so now they've got a 4K feed into their computer, but they use Zoom for a local record. Well, that's going to step it down too, right? So that's still going to step it down to 1080. So maybe they have a separate solution, right? Separate software solution that will keep that 4K intact prior to, Zoom stepping it down. I don't know. I don't have any guess on if the double-ended recording will record the actual initial camera feed locally at, to say 4K or whatnot. I really have no clue on that one, so I'm not even going to guess. But I am going to take a guess that double-ended recording, which means, I can record my end and I can tell the system to record your end, and it's doing it locally. So it's going to have better performance, right? It doesn't consume network bandwidth to pull that off. And then I'm assuming it will end the meeting. And when it does, it goes through a conversion. And when it's finished, it uploads it to the host's account. That's my assumption. It is if I want to call it a prediction, I can, but it's not based on any knowledge that I have from talking to anybody at Zoom. It just makes sense. And the other thing I know is Andy's a really smart guy, and he designs great solutions. So he's part of that team. So I would expect a pretty impressive, product at the end of the day that, and they announced this last November in Zoomtopia, the double-ended recording, right? And so I think that was pretty inspired, project development compared to you now, Robert, sitting in June saying this is real. Like the demand is kind of new, kind of fresh, kind of getting bigger from your customers. And so I think that was pretty inspired to start that project of double.
There's a big demand with social media now for short targeted clips that will be posted as YouTube shorts or what have you, to promote your event, to be, this is what you missed, or here's content that we share. So there'll be more and more of that, and the demand by the client for good quality recording so that they can snip these pieces is I think what's driving the demand, because everybody now knows they need to put out 3 to 5 minute pieces. and
Yeah.
just flood the market with it. It's an important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Digestible nuggets, right? That's
Yeah.
how, I mean, it's what I enjoy the most. I don't spend a bundle of time on them, but when I find somebody who has some really cool, helpful shorts on, Windows 10 or Windows 11, so I can ramp up quick, that's my preferred method of content consumption. And so, yeah,
Mine's on
absolutely
physical
right.
fitness.
Yeah, there you go. Mine obviously is not.
The other thing,
But yeah, go ahead, Robert.
the other thing I'd like to share with you guys, this is an experience from this week, is because when we had a hybrid event that we were streaming, and what we were all ready, and 10 minutes before the event in a hotel, the whole of the internet went down. Yeah? And that really got me thinking, because when you sent out the topic for today's Zoom Test Kitchen, you talked about preparing yourself pre-event. And the two things that we were very, very lucky to have on board at the time. One is we have an LTE router standby with 2 SIMs in it, just sitting there waiting for this to happen. And I realized that what we need to do is actually have it plugged in to the switch that we're using on site, so that we don't have any break time. So that was the one thing I learned. And the second thing is we always record in our cameras, because our cameras can record while they're streaming. We do a local record at the same time. And I was just blessed by that. When I came out of there and realized that we had all of this, I realized, whoa, this is that case. This is that use case where if you don't, you're in a bit of a mess. You can explain to the customer that it wasn't your fault, the internet went down, but that's not the point. The point is, what did you do to get and to mitigate all of the issues that would come up? And so I was really happy with the outcome of that. And it was got me thinking, and just like I said, now I'm going to have that LTE modem plugged in to the switch right from the start. I'm not going to wait for the internet to go down. It's going to sit there waiting for something to go wrong.
Yeah, depending on how critical the events are, and every customer would say it's critical until you show them the price to support critical, but our contact, Keenan Campbell has moved into, I don't remember what the site is, I apologize, but Keenan Campbell, and I know John Preto's super good friends with him, and he has this switch with multiple antennas and multiple mobile golly, why am I missing the cards, the multiple cards for the providers? Okay, SIMs. There we go. That's what I was looking for. Multiple SIMs for multiple providers, the whole bit, and it has network ports on it. And so you literally like set this thing down and plug it into a power supply and plug in the computers that are responsible for the outbound or required inbound. And you can either just run it off that, for your own guaranteed bandwidth, and or plug it in as a backup as well.
That whole world of combiners is going to be exploding, because LiveView and others that are doing it, they're slammed. So there's going to be some competition in there to get 4 to 6 SIM cards, various other ways to get into it. It's a growth industry right now.
Big time. Absolutely agree. Yeah, it's a lifesaver. I mean, all the customer wants is a seamless, uninterrupted experience, right? And that's commonly a lot easier than it is to accomplish. And it's sometimes it's just hard to sell, right? The customer expectations, can easily not be aligned with the cost of providership of those types of, backup solutions and so forth. So you have to have, I think you'll have to have a seller who really can, describe the value. And, it's like buying insurance though. That's insurance and backup systems are like the two toughest things to sell, right? Is you, if you could buy that policy now and rewind 24 hours so it would be in place so you could get your car fixed and have insurance pay for it, right? But that and backup systems, a bad backup, no backup catastrophe is what convinces a lot of companies, unfortunately, that it's time to invest in a good backup system. And same thing as well, to have a device sitting on the table, but I show up with a vMix primary and a vMix backup laptops. And I have 2 Stream Decks, one to the primary, one to the backup, but each Stream Deck switches the show on both vMixes simultaneously. So if any one of those systems, either the Stream Decks and or the vMix machines go down, I can use this Stream Deck or that Stream Deck and still switch the show on primary or backup. With YouTube, you have a backup stream. And I mean, it's far too simple to implement, than to ignore it. I mean, it's just literally copy and paste, put it as the backup stream. Now, the part I don't love about it, and it may be my own ignorance, but the only way I can tell, because it's YouTube who decides, like they're getting both streams, all the time. They decide which one they're going to use. And I haven't been able to find an indicator that says YouTube's consuming vMix 1 or vMix 2. I don't know where that is. And so the only way I've been able to figure it out is manually make a change in vMix and see if it happens on the stream. Yeah, and I'll know which one it is. Because I was like, these graduations we did a couple weeks back, it seemed to really, for some reason, be favoring my vMix backup laptop, which by far was, I mean, it was a laptop and it was it was the production companies. I told them before I left, I said, that laptop may be new, but it is not capable of anything more than a single stream, not a record and a stream, a single stream, because where I could be sitting at 12% usage on the primary, I was at 66% with the exact same configured workload on this laptop. And worse than that, there was this impression that it's a new laptop, and it is, but it's just not spec'd out well enough, and so, it's just being aware. But for some reason, YouTube was still ingesting from the backup to live. And so my one button press to start the stream, which did it on both laptops, I put a 20-second delay. So I still just had to push the button once, but it started the primary, let it run for 20 seconds, and then it started the secondaries backup stream, just so there was a gap. And I, basically got YouTube used to this machine, and then it stuck. But it was like, I don't know why. I don't know the logic. That's the thing. I just don't know how it makes its decisions. Therefore, I just created some space and start the stream early. And so that 20-second wasn't live production. It was just the beginning of the stream, pre-roll and so forth. So it wasn't super critical at that point. So
delays are always a lifesaver, aren't they, Jeff? Delays.
Oh yeah. Sleep. If you're programming in vMix, it's a sleep script command or delays in Companion, and yeah, they get super useful. One, it keeps things kind of top to bottom, and you can just write it all in one. But sometimes it can literally solve issues, that you contend with, because at the end, the thing is, at the end of I didn't have a perfect sync between the Stream Deck actions and both vMixes. It was enough to run off of, and it was a dual stream. But when I ended the graduation, I had like this colored, what they call it, translucent kind of see-through color wash with the logo. And I was doing it on one of the vMix primary, realizing that it wasn't even happening on the actual stream. And I'm like, daggone it, it's pulling off of number 2, and so I'd love to have some kind of tally from YouTube of, which stream, the primary or the backup, that it's actually pulling from, but I haven't found
Hello,
that
guys.
result yet.
Yeah, I'll sorry about my voice this week, but I'm a little hoarse. So the official answer in YouTube's mind is that, and this is what I've done in my testing, is YouTube is basically, what you should do is basically do, like you were saying, it's similar to a delay between the 2 units. I have tested going too short and it confuses YouTube. So what I have done myself is actually hard-coded 1 minute between my primary and my backup. So I'll send YouTube for a minute, my primary. Then after a minute, I will send it to backup.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only way that it'll cut over from the primary to the backup if the primary encoder dies after X amount of time.
How do
Then
you
it will
know
cut over
that?
to
How do you know that the logic is only on actual death versus the feed is dropping frames now, the bandwidth is constrained now? There's a lot of things between good and death for it to
Right.
make a switch
Right.
decision.
Again, it's the testing that I have done, it's been death. It hasn't been, if I had bad bandwidth at the location, YouTube will just sit there and wait for it. If it actually notices after a certain amount of time that you are gone, then and only then will it kick over to the back.
Yeah, I'll have to test that some more because it.
And again, just to let everybody know too, I am starting to test SRT to YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
Coming soon.
Yep, that's what I hear.
Yeah, I'm part of the group that's allowed to start SRT testing on YouTube. Yeah.
That makes it sound like, oh my gosh, I want that. Why would somebody want to stream to YouTube via SRT versus RTMP, for instance?
More reliable than RTMP. Is the
which
official
equals more latency.
It does, depending on the setting that you have set up in your SRT. And
Yeah,
again,
but
it depends
but
on
the
how far you are
protocol.
away
My
from the
point is
server.
the protocol itself, by nature, TCP, which is the more reliable protocol, which is what SRT I believe is wrapped up in, is a more latent protocol. There's no avoiding it because I can send a message and hope it gets there in sequence very quickly. That's UDP. But but if I want sure delivery, I have to wait for an acknowledgement for every packet I send. And that's what SRT is built on. So the reliability is, yes, absolutely. But I think some of the super fast settings, real low latency settings from YouTube, I can only imagine are going to be somewhat affected by using a more reliable protocol and expecting the same low latency type results. Hey, anyways,
So right now,
I guess that's part, but I understand the protocol. It also guarantees sequencing. That's the thing. If it's received packet 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and then it gets 7 and 8, it's like, I never got 6. And so because it never acknowledged that it got 6, the sender eventually says, I'm only going to wait so long for an acknowledgement before I resend packet 6. But in the meantime, the recipient is, the receiving side is going to wait for number 6 because it knows it has 7, but not 6. And when it gets it, it puts it in there. So like dropped frames, that reliability and jitter and so forth, that's huge improvement on video quality, right? I mean, tell me if I'm wrong in my understanding, but that's where the reliability really shines is guaranteed sequencing of our frames as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a lot easier for YouTube to ingest, will be my official answer to that too. Meaning that the again, we will be coming in over through the actual configurations that you end up getting. So basically, if everybody's familiar with the YouTube Studio, you'll now have an additional drop down once you are authorized to do SRT, where you can actually do your own RTMP key. You can have multiple RTMP keys. You will eventually have an SRT option in there as well, where you can actually generate your own SRT key.
Well, and I'm guessing. I hope you're not. I'm assuming you're not talking out of turn if you're, under NDA and testing. But
Oh no,
so
no.
I'm assuming SRT also supports passphrases as well, right? As far as
Yes.
a layer of
Yes.
of knowing it's establishing itself with the party that that
Correct.
was told
Yeah.
about as well, which is a big plus.
Yeah, there will be a stream ID. There'll be the passphrase will be used. The stream key will be used. The passphrase will be used. There's a slight modification that you'll need to do depending on your SRT encoder. So that will be that's where the testing is happening right now. It's because there's certain variables that YouTube will need additional coming from the SRT protocol sent to it so that it understands that it is truly you and not somebody else. So that is actually going to kick it up a little further too. It's getting more into the RTMPS scenario. So that's where SRT is, again, with the secure, reliable transport, right? So that's where, again, YouTube is going to love that more, where the RTMP, in theory, if you gave out your RTMP, the URL and the stream key and code, anybody could trample over top of it at any time. Where the SRT, it's going to take that out of the equation, man.
Yeah.
Mike, does that mean that if you set up a VPN between two locations, then you can reduce all of that handshaking confirmation in SRT to increase the speed and drop the lag and the delays?
Well, it's always going to be, and again, this is where SRT is a lot more flexible than RTMP. Again, it's always going to be, the infamous trace route. Trace route is your friend in streaming, and everybody should be using it, which means that the more hops you are away from the true streaming server that you're sending to, the more delay you should actually be adding in SRT, because that'll just increase the reliability of the SRT receiving to not drop any packets.
Yeah.
Right. So
and I mean, and that's a point of its own, really, because we're not configuring delay with RTMP. It's just, it dynamically manages a buffer for each individual, audience member or viewer, where SRT, to your point, it may be able to manage a buffer on the outbound, but the outbound's only going to deliver the jumpy garbage you feed it, because your delay or latency that you've identified through testing, which is all about those hops, what kind of equipment. I mean, these are all routers along the way that we have no ability to affect, good or bad. It's just, that's part of our route, right? And these are vendor after vendor after vendor after vendor, that's just moving packets. And so you really do have to identify that sweet spot. And just because 200 or 300 milliseconds worked yesterday does not mean it's going to work today if you have a different destination. And so I think that'll be a pretty big eye opener for everybody, is to really have to test that out, find that sweet spot, and go for it.
Exactly, Jeff. And on top of that too, of course, ping and trace route is definitely your friend. So if you're starting to see ping going up, then you should be making sure that, okay, if I'm, today with nobody using the bandwidth from X location to Y location, I got really low ping times. But today, now I'm at the gig and I'm, 10 minutes out, 15 minutes out, and might be having a lot of interference, or depending on the way you are connected internet wise, you easily could have higher ping times. Well, then you should be definitely on the SRT encoder, be adding that buffer in there so that it will make it smoother. Yes, it will be adding, as Jeff is saying, it'll add more delay at YouTube's end, but you'd rather it be together and look nice than for there to ever be, all of a sudden, boop, and all of a sudden now you got to drop.
And the other thing is, to add to, the need to test to identify, that sweet spot. That sweet spot is there's no guarantee that sweet spot holds for that event, because the entire magic of the internet itself as a transport highway, if you will, is its ability to dynamically reroute on the fly with next to no feel for, the customer and so forth. So, at the beginning of the event, you may have been, had this kind of straight line from Boston to LA, if you were looking at a physical map on Google, for instance. But now if you did a trace route, you may see you're going down southeast. You may see you're going down to South America. It will reroute dynamically, and there's nothing really you can do to change that. You just have to have the tools to see it, and if you have a problem, make adjustments accordingly. So it'd be pretty interesting to, one, I'll just say get familiar with the tools, but I mean, because I haven't seen, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, because it probably does. It's not been my area of, deep dig, but, like a geographical map, I want to see trace route on a geographical map. Is there one?
Yes, there is. It's called
visual. You got to give me that link to that, because it just makes so much more sense. I mean, I want to pull up Google Maps, right, and say, hey, my destination is this. Now give me the directions. That's exactly what trace route is over the internet. It's just from this router to that router to that router to that router. I mean, there's a lot more interchanges with trace route than there are probably traveling across the 70 for 6 states. But needless to say, you are kind of looking for it, but you have to be aware. I mean, that's
so the actual software is actually called Visual Trace Route.
Visual Trace Route.
Awesome.
Route. Yeah, that's great. Love it. There
you go. Ray's
I
got
mean,
it.
I was doing a stream for our church a couple of years ago, and we were all tested out. We do this big thing for the church twice a year. It's coming up next weekend, and actually I'll probably need a host next week, next Friday. It's one of those, if I start the Zoom test kitchen, I'm gonna have to leave early, because we start setting up at 5 at night, and we usually don't finish till 12 midnight, and then we're back in at 9 in the morning, and we go all day Saturday and most of the day Sunday. But it was this event, and everything was ready to roll, felt great, tested out, speed test. Our church had their own CDN, and did the speed test locally, did the speed test directly to the CDN, the whole bit. And then it fell to pieces when we went live. It's like, what in the heck? And Sunday streams are usually pretty friendly, as far as being. And we have Google Fiber there, and we've got some decent. I mean, easily 600 up and down, and almost all the time. But bandwidth isn't everything, I mean, you can have a big fat pipe and run into a jam right when you get down the street, and so it's not all about that. And fact is, I ended up, after pulling my hair out for a while, and then did a trace route, because tech support couldn't on the receiving end, identify what the issue was and so forth. So I did a trace route. I was everywhere. I mean, like, I was traveling around the globe. My latency on a ping went from probably 80 to 120 up into the 600s or so. I mean, it was crazy. And it was nothing I could solve, it was really nothing I could solve. And so the user's end experience was not happy. So
there's a couple of things. Again, I'm going to show my age in the streaming world here, but there's a couple of things that I've always found out and stuff is that if you can be ideally 10 hops or less to the streaming server, the better. That's A. Now, that doesn't happen much anymore. But, and again, this is back in the older technology. So you really want to be within like 10 hops away from the actual point A encoder, point B, the streaming server. That's ideal. Because at least then the chances of you, as Jeff is saying, hopping to other locations is going to be a lot more minor, because usually within the point of presence, the POPs, the data centers, they'll usually have redundant connections in those data centers as well, because I've also worked at big ISPs. Now, what I also suggest too, and this is something, again, I used to do back in the day, was that if I actually was coming into a venue that I was webcasting from, I would actually get a physical connection of my own installed at the location. Now, again, you got to remember back in the day, it was, the amount of, for me to get 10 meg was, lots of money. So, again, and again, too, we were not streaming at 4 megabit, 6 megabit, 8 megabit. We were lucky to say, back in those days, we were lucky to be 2 megabit. So, with our SD streams, but the the 10 hops is usually the best. If you can, now, if you notice too, and this is something else too, depending on your technical expertise, if you can actually fire up a repeater. Now, I'll use that term loosely. Basically, it would be in the cloud. You would set up either in like AWS or, pick your poison here, a temporary server that is a lot closer to your actual endpoint, meaning like in Jeff's case, the church, but yet that to Linode or AWS is only going to be like 10 hops, but yet that YouTube might be 13, 14, 15 hops. It would actually be better to actually relay it through an actual streaming server that you've set up yourself, or a third-party service like a Restream, and then you actually go from them out, because they usually have the multiple redundancies to YouTubes and the Facebooks.
Well, that, and I think I think another way of saying what you just explained really is the faster you can get to the backbone of the internet itself, that's where all the big guys are. That's where your shortest, fastest routes exist. And if you can help, get that better direct line to get you to the backbone faster, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that, when we have domain names only exist because we're human and we can't remember numbers, and we have IP addresses because we're human and we can't remember binary numbers. You know what I'm saying? Like they get longer and longer and so forth. And so, for us, we use a name. Well, it doesn't go anywhere till it resolves it to an IP address. And then that will segment it out to different networks, areas of communication that are common to one another. But if if you have a network A and a network B that's disparate to one another, you have to put in that device called a router. And a router will, it keeps track of everybody it's connected to, like directly connected to, not anybody further. So it has to go, it's like, well, I know that you're here and I'm getting asked for your address, so I'm going to route you through. But that's not their destination. That's just to that hop. And so it just resolves and it resolves and it resolves. And there's a lot of work. And then there's like, so I type in a domain name. First it says, well, what IP address is that? It says, well, it looks at my local cache, which are like recently answered, recent answers to domain questions within a certain amount of time. That'll be in my local cache. So I'll get a super fast answer. But if it's not, it has to go up a DNS provider, and then possibly up a DNS provider, until finally it gets to the name server registrars. I don't think the terminology is right, but where's the name registered? If nobody in the chain knows what IP address that name is, it eventually ends up at the registration system. And it tells you what server it lives on, and that's an IP address that will kind of keep going there. That's why sometimes some domain names resolve very quickly. Sometimes you're like, wow, why did that pause so long? And it's like nobody had the answer. It had to go to the register and then continue on. But everybody along the way who asked, who didn't have a local answer, will also backfill their caches so that it will be faster for your next experience. I mean, it's a beautiful science. It really is an amazing creation, but there's a lot of pieces and parts, and there's a lot of pieces and parts that we have, we can be aware of, but that doesn't always translate we have total control. Total control is paying big money for a point-to-point connection, and it doesn't hit publicly managed from other vendors that you have no idea who they are or how they manage or what kind of equipment they invested in or anything like that, right? And going over the internet, man, I mean, you're literally putting you're putting critical events dependent on public networks that 95% of it you have zero control of, and so I mean, it's one of those things. Most companies wouldn't take that kind of risk, in other things that they've done. It's like, no way, we're not hiring a 14-year-old truck driver. I mean, it's like some things are super obvious and they just don't make those decisions. But the internet and public internet has become so prevalent, and maybe somebody would say, oh, well, do a direct VPN. That doesn't solve the problem. It's still traveling over the same public internet with all those, configurations of different routers and vendors in between. When I was taking Cisco training way back when, one of the best VPN descriptions that I had somebody provide, they said, imagine there's like this 12-inch clear pipe, and you can see all the water just flowing through it. And you can see the fish, and you can see all kinds of objects and so forth. But in there, you also see this solid copper pipe. And something's got to be in there, but you can't freaking see it. And that's a VPN. It's going over the same public, highway, if you will, but it's doing it in a protected mode because it's all encrypted. But I thought the visual of a like half-inch copper pipe within this 12-inch clear tube was a really great visual of what a VPN provides you. Does not change the path necessarily, but protects your data along the way. So
yeah, absolutely.
Does anyone have any experience with Starlink in that respect?
Oh, I know about Starlink, but short. As far as are the broadcast world starting to use Starlink? Yes, they are. So that's different. I'm not what we do. The broadcast world is starting to use Starlink. So yes. So I know for a fact Starlink was used at when the funeral happened for Queen Elizabeth. There were certain news outlets that were actually backhauling using Starlink because of the fact that they are in the output where they actually were. There was no physical fiber sitting out there. So unless you had a fiber, unless you brought an actual truck in and stuff, you're beaming back to satellite that, and you're doing it the old fashioned way, or you're doing it the new fashioned way, which was trying to get internet out of that location. A lot of them were using the live view, like Ray was talking about. But again, even live view was having problems getting out of there too, because they're running into problems with 4G, 5G, because there's thousands
of people that are using the same cellular networks. Yeah.
That's right.
Every one of the 45, 50 foot, $20 million TV trucks travel with at least one Starlink now. And the remote trucks that are pulled up to your house, if you're going to be a guest on a network show, you're going to be an insert. They all have Starlink on them now as a backup.
Okay, that's interesting because I was thinking of Starlink because it actually eliminates the local nodes that could go down if there's a power supply cut because
No,
you're going
because
straight up.
they really, they have to have, the terrestrial connection has to be there. I think Mike can explain it better than I do, but it's not all satellite. There's a little magic involved.
Yeah. So the way that the Starlink infrastructure works is that you, of course, are downlinking from Starlink. But again, again, it's usually 1 millisecond up. That's the old satellite, and then 1 millisecond down. That's the old satellite, meaning Starlink is at a lower altitude, closer to the Earth. So it's not actually 1 millisecond. They've actually cut it down, I think, to like a half a millisecond, I believe. It's something around that. Anyways, but so basically you are going up and going down. But again, the way that they are doing is they are flying by, right? So these satellites, as they fly by, go down to base stations. So basically what Elon Musk and the gang at Starlink has to do is set up pods of internet so that as these satellites go over top of them, they know that they can go back down to that pod and they actually get you onto the internet.
So the access is local. What I'm looking for is where is the backbone of this? Where is it going to? Because my thinking was if we have a power cut locally around in the city that I'm located in, then what it usually does is it affects a couple of nodes on the network from the ISP upwards. So doesn't Starlink resolve that problem?
It does, because it might go to a different country. In your case, because of you being in Europe, it would be a different country. In our case, because we're North America, we might go from the West Coast to the East Coast. And also he is actually implementing, which I don't know officially if it's actually been implemented at this point or not, but a way for the actual satellites up there to intercommunicate amongst themselves. So if it doesn't find one, it can actually borrow. But again, now we're borrowing dedicated bandwidth from that other one now to power these as they go by, because they couldn't call home to the home pod as they're flying over, right?
And all those ground stations are run on a generator. Backup.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's no.
I think the first
issue.
time I heard your description might be how Robert heard it as well. And it sounded like, I think his initial presentation was, that direct connection up to the sky is, has got to save something. And I think in the beginning we heard you say it, but then towards the end you're laying off of it in the sense that that you are there is some dependency on the ground. But there needs to be some kind of clarity on that, because when we were sitting in the Las Vegas lake bed desert area, we had zero internet, zero cellular, and we went Starlink, and that's how we broadcast the rocket launch. So there was no land-based dependency. We had a backup to that, and we had somebody go across the lake bed towards the interstate, and we shot a microwave link across. But I think I'm pretty confident that we primarily used Starlink without any cellular local dependency.
Ray, go ahead, and I'll back in.
It's the control sequence that's back and forth with the land unit. It's not your broadcast signal. Am I correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for clarity. Is it first felt like my laptop is dependent on some land before satellite. I think what we've confirmed here is no, you'll get from your dish to the skies, and then it will bounce off the land. I mean, it's the satellite's relationship to these base stations, not mine. Right. Now, my route is part of that. Consequentially, I think was your initial point, probably, right?
Yeah. So I'll explain this a little more, and I'll go back to the old school satellite, because back in the mid 90s, I was actually doing internet over the old fashioned satellite. and we're doing a whopping T1. If anybody knows what that is, it's only 1.5 megabit per second. Woo!
It was big time in the day.
That was big time in the day, baby. You know, my initial backbone was, 2B ISDN, which everybody, if you don't know what that is, you're lucky if it's, half a meg. So basically what we ended up doing was we had our main satellite. There were all the dishes on the ground were pointing to, and we were the base station. So basically our internet connection was at the downlink location of the satellite, right? So there's each satellite that's needing internet from us, we're uplinks. So, well, okay, let me do it this way. We were an uplink and downlink because it's 2A. In the video world, it would be a different story. But in basically each ground station, so back in those days, it was each ISP. So I was setting up baby ISPs across Canada because there wasn't enough fiber going across Canada. So basically we would have a big 6-foot dish, like the big, C-band dishes, where they would be at a location, download, and that would be your upload download link. But again, they were pointing to one specific satellite that everybody was sharing, right? So this is old technology we're talking here now. And everybody was sharing that one bandwidth. And then they were only getting that from our master dish at our head end, which is where we actually had the whopping T1 from UNINET back in those days, actually coming to us that we're supplying the full bandwidth of all the different locations so that they can have, dial-up modems in different parts of the country.
So you knew Goonhilly.
I knew
Goonhilly. That was where all the European satellites bounced up so that they could come across back and forth. Because I was in the C-band business.
Okay, so if you're talking, are you talking Cognate Hill?
No. It was Goonhilly in, I think it was in Ireland, and someplace in New England was the U.S. downlink. But these were 30-foot dishes that had to fold up on trailers. Oh, yeah. And you had to call and say, I'm ready to go on. Well, somebody's running long, or because you literally could not compete for the time. So you had to coordinate through a site, and you would be responsible. Good night, New York. We're out of here. And boom, somebody else would be on in half a second.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Yeah. At most, you might be lucky. Ray, correct me if I'm wrong. You might get bars and tone.
Yes.
And that was it.
Yep.
Yeah, you would get bars and tone, but you would not get you were just off carrier until they wanted you on carrier, right? So bars and tone, so that you knew you were pointing to the satellite, you were at the right place, but you were actually not live. You were not getting, you're not able to broadcast back to your head.
Yeah. Well, there were 32 channels on the average satellite back then, 16 on each side. And it was tightly controlled, and you had to be very careful where you parked the truck. We used to do sports, and we'd actually have to shield so that it wouldn't disturb any microwave or disturb any cell traffic. So we'd actually back the truck down into the holler to the loading dock in most stadiums, so it was shielded. You'd have to do an advanced site inspection and prove the science to them before they'd give you the window to broadcast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, when I was working,
it was fun.
Yeah. When I was working on Jump TV,
I was trying to bring this back into today's topic, which
Thanks.
we haven't even brought up an hour and a half later.
So the honest answer is Starlink is good, but there is a but. You will lose packets eventually. Why do I say that? Because each satellite are in pods up in the sky. So you're pointed, right? And the dishy, as they've nicknamed it, the Star Dish is called Dishy. That's their nickname. It basically knows, it keeps flying along with you, and it keeps slowly moving as the satellite goes through, right? But eventually that satellite block, there will be just enough space of sky through that there'll be a couple packets that you'll lose with Sterling. It's just
not if
by
it's
design.
SRT. SRT
Right.
won't let you lose them.
That's right. That's again.
There we go.
Right,
Tying
yeah.
some topics together. Now it
That's right.
matters what streaming protocol you're using because
That's right.
you're using satellite. You know, I mean, it really actually super applicable. You know, but yeah, kind of far beyond the scope of Zoom. You know, to a degree. It was the question was, you know, in preparing for an event that that you know either do or could or should show up with a backup internet pipe, right, of your own. And you know, when you know you're going to a live event that's going to have, you know, thousands of people, just decide early, I'm not competing with what they're using, right? And that even goes for like a network drop. You know, like the facility may give you a network drop, but there's several more questions to ask and get answered accurately from the engineer who configures those switches and routers to you know, really see, is my network drop traffic going to be prioritized, is one of the simpler ones. But you know, and is it you know, not and then how is it prioritized? You know, is the port fully prioritized, or is the protocol prioritized, and so forth, to see how far away or how separated you are from the audience that's in the room, using, you know, the Wi-Fi network, which, you know, at some point goes through the same equipment, right? But depends heavily on how they've got it configured and, you know, virtually separated and so forth. So, you know, if they answer the, you know, right questions with the right answers, then a drop, you know, can be quite reliable. But if they don't have an answer for you, or they have the wrong answers, then yeah, I'd say decide early to bring your own bandwidth and price accordingly.
And exactly, Jeff, that's exactly what I did 20 years ago, because for me to even talk to an IT guy going, what do you mean I have to open up the ports on the firewall? What do you mean I have to insert
IT
here?
used to walk around. They used to be able to, and not very many of them get by with it anymore, but they used to be able to walk around with a stop sign in their hand, and they just stop you. They were just blockers, you know. Now IT, most of my experience is, if you can get the right people, they will commonly work with you, or at least provide you the right kind of guidance in their facility. You know, they're not just stoppers, like don't touch my network, right? You know, because I mean, you're putting on a show for the big guys, right, of the company, and so normally you have the right sponsors, and it helps a lot. But if
if I can just, you know, you made the point about the local Wi-Fi and the number of people getting on to the local LTE, for example, whatever internet access. I had an inquiry last week where someone was having an event, and we did the interpreting for that event, but we did it remotely using Zoom. And they asked me if they can have the attendees that are in the room, in the conference room, connect up via Zoom on their mobiles and select the interpretation channels. Yeah. And I explained to them that, listen, you'll just, after you've got 25 people on the Wi-Fi, you'll start having problems. And when you get 50, that'll be it. It'll just stop working altogether. And this is like experience. They went for it. And
they did
because
it.
They went for it. And I knew this wasn't going to work. So we took headsets for the interpretation, and we had the headsets on site. Within 20 minutes of the start of the meeting, they switched to headsets. It just doesn't work when you get such a large demand on a load on the Wi-Fi. And the IT guys said that the Wi-Fi is fine, it can cope and all that. No ways. It just doesn't cope. You get a limited amount of sockets that are available on each Wi-Fi channel, and it just blocks up.
In that example, that's not a Zoom thing. You know, like Zoom a year ago, proposing that, you know, 100 additional people in the event log into Zoom for the interpretation, that would have been a Zoom problem. But today with Zoom's, mesh capability and so forth, it can be one edge Zoom server that is in charge of distributing locally, that experience. But still, you've got the hardware, to your point, Robert, the hardware behind it, as far as Wi-Fi capacity and network capacity and so forth. And yeah, Wi-Fi will fail sooner than anything else, in almost all cases.
Yeah, I have a lot of stories on that too, where I've done an awesome job of taking down corporate networks back in the day. Because everybody, and it got to the point where I actually brought, as part of my rig, I would actually, in my road case, actually bring streaming servers with me. Just because it got to the point of, I broadcasted one local copy so that everybody, so I made just a temporary, again, we're talking the Windows Media days. So I made a temporary web page that everybody can go to internally to my server, and which was just literally 2 servers that I had in a road case that I just rolled in with me. And what I did was I broadcasted one copy, one encoder went to locally, and then also one copy went remote. So if they wanted it to be publicly addressed there as well. I've done all kinds of different ones where half of it is supposed to be public, and then all of a sudden we're going private. I've done versions of it's entirely public. I've done entirely versions that are totally internal as well, where I definitely had to bring my servers and stuff like that, because back in those days, they never had the infrastructure at all, right?
Yeah.
There was never anything there. So they were relying on my expertise in the streaming world, building content delivery networks to actually make a baby one temporarily in the actual facility, work with the IT guys, and literally just, okay, give me 100 meg port. Again, 100 meg port back in those days. Give me 100 meg port so I can plug this in. So at least, you'll have some people, and as long as you can force them not to go to the public one, that'll save your, back in those days, they were lucky to have 10 meg to the internet. A lot of the corporations that I was dealing with too. So all it took was, 8, 10 people watching, boom, their backbone disappeared.
Yeah, it's been a path of growth, that's for sure, and continues to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's
especially with NDI and Dante and stuff like that.
1080 to 4K to 6K, 8K. It's amazing how much really data we're expecting or preparing for, and so forth. And it's one of those things. It's where it's easy for me to go buy an 8K camera. It's a much larger project for the entire backbone of the internet worldwide to catch up to that, and that's really what happens is, and these pro devices help fund the development of them. Then the consumer catches on, and then finally they realize all the limitations and, of what they want to do with it. And then the backbone and all that equipment, and, IP version 4 to IP version 6 has, been part of that along the way, just for the number of devices that, have been required to be uniquely identified, right? I mean, from 32-bit address to 128-bit address, and it's amazing. I used to teach tech classes years ago, and I was saying it, but I didn't even know really what I was saying. I don't know that I really believed exactly what I was saying, but it was like, hey, one day our toasters and coffee makers and refrigerators will have IP addresses. That's what I would say. Long before anybody, you'd get scoffed at that point. But I was teaching IP version 4 and subnetting and to the binary level and so forth, where you can see, like eventually this is going to cap out. The best you can get is a class A address. Well, there's only a few of them, and that only leaves 24 bits, and 24 power of 2 is only, so many, 64,000, 65,000 addresses. And then it's like, well, then you better learn subnetting and routing to segment your network so that the number of devices on that network can actually be supported by an IP address range, and and a lot of people
Mhm.
don't go there. But there's been just a ton of scaling issues. IP version 6, it still doesn't live in my office, and it's not because I've said not to. It's just it's been more easily adaptable up top, upstream, if you will, and they certainly are relying on it. But
Yeah.
anyways,
And the good thing about the US is actually a little further off than Canada. I don't know about in Poland, Robert, but I know one of our big telcos up here still will not offer us IPv6 addresses when we connect it at this point.
yeah,
And we're still IPv4. So they haven't even figured out how to infrastructure wise delegate not only an IPv4 to me, but also delegate an IPv6 to me so I can actually start doing IPv6 routing. And again, there are certain sites online that are already IPv6 capable, but some of them have actually gone away from IPv4 and you can only get to them as IPv6. So that's where this will eventually will start going too.
Yeah, eventually they'll get strong armed, I guess. But yeah, right now it's all backwards compatibility, that has to
Yeah.
stay there. And that's tech. Well, in preparing for your next Zoom meeting or Zoom event, we covered pretty, exhaustively, like bandwidth. I mean, if we summarized what we've been talking about is the critical nature. I would say what most providers, event providers, are reliant upon is, at the end of the day, quite fragile. I mean, the way it's built, and I'm not saying it's a bad build. I mean, the public internet's amazing. and the ability to instantly use it versus having to place an order with your telecom company and get a point-to-point spun up and so forth. I mean, there's just nobody considers that anymore. Satellite at best, right? And but it's are there other methods? And the answer is yes. Even if it was us four guys, the four of us, we showed up and we unfolded our 6-foot tables and laid out our laptops, even us can make it happen via satellite these days. And you just have to create as much separation as you possibly can between the crowd, right? The multiple users who are going to be the consumers of the bandwidth you're going to be getting paid to be, relied on for the event. And that's a super risky deal. And so I will, I'll say that, satellite by far is, I mean, I don't even know what their scaling issues are, their growth issues, kind of like Zoom at the beginning of, the pandemic. The world came at them, feverishly, and infrastructure. They were ready to accept the subscription dollars, but they weren't at all ready to support it, in their infrastructure that they had out there. And so they had to, kind of lessen the delivery. That was, if you're, even if you're business, you're going to be 720. If you're pro, you're going to be 360. If you're free, you're definitely 360. As far as resolution, they had to kind of lower the deliverables and then grant by exception so that they could, kind of lessen the impact on their existing infrastructure while they continue to try to, in the background, scale it, for the massive demand. And I'm only guessing that they're probably having to unreel from some of that now too, right? Because they had, this big peak that they're coming off of, and they've got to rid themselves of, that expense that they had to ramp up for and serve their customers because of, kind of the decline, not because of the product, just because of the conditions, right? And so there's some less usage and subscribers and so forth. So anyways, the demand is down. So interesting deal. But what other, as far as a Zoom meeting, so let's think about in the sense of we may have lost them already on YouTube, but maybe I'll make a short of this. You know, in the sense of preparing for your next, let's say, Zoom meeting first, and then if we want to take the time, although we're already 20 minutes away from 2 hours, but maybe we'll extend that either today or next time on preparing for the next Zoom event versus Zoom, you know, meeting. And I'm not talking about, you know, this tiny 6-person, 8-person meeting, you know, talking about, you know, a bit of a chunky meeting. Could be, you know, 50, 100, 300, things like that. But it's not like an event as far as, you know, having like a big run of show. Yeah, the CEO is going to talk and, you know, a couple other key speakers, but it's all internal or whatever the case may be there. So, yeah, I'll just go with you guys and let you kind of kick things off on you know, and it's really kind of from customer facing, you know, some of those things you have to, you know, ask all the way to, you know, I tell you, maybe I'll fire things up here. So because of the changes that have taken place with DVE Store, who sponsored, you know, our Zoom experience in the Zoom Test Kitchen for a long time. The other day, through 2 or 3 days ago, I got an email message that kind of clued me into maybe that license went away. So then I logged in with those credentials, and that account showed up as a basic account. And I'm like, okay, well, I mean, it wasn't maybe the timing, but it wasn't a shock or a surprise. I mean, you know, Guy and I have spoken, and we knew sometime it, you know, it might work out or it might not, and it didn't, and that's okay. We're prepared for that, but the you know, so I'm in a pickle. One, Zoom Test Kitchen for that moment was, you know, not going to continue to be, you know, high definition and have, you know, quite all the options, you know, turned on, those that might be enterprise dependent. But then next week I have a job that I have to actually sport the webinar. I have to provide the webinar key in the whole bit. And now I had zero access to that. So, you know, am I going to go, you know, beg somebody that I know or go pay for it, you know, and add it to, you know, maybe a one-time ad or a 30-day ad or something like that. But I was in, you know, kind of a business pickle as well. But that's nobody's issue but my own. And so, you know, the community itself, this production community that we're all a part of, you know, proved to be absolutely amazing. And, you know, while Guy and I were on the phone, he, unbeknownst to me, wrote Greg. And while we're on the phone, I got an invite from Greg's enterprise account to accept it. And boom, everything, I mean, everything, all my recordings, all my meetings that were recurring. And this is what I figured out 30 minutes before we got started today. All my backend portal settings came right over into his enterprise license from Guy's enterprise license. That one really kind of blew me away because Greg texted me today. He was like, hey, make sure that, you know, you go check the settings to make sure, because neither one of us were at all had any confidence or experience of whether that, you know, carried over. Well, when I got to the house and started looking at, like, my waiting room was there, my logo was there. I mean, top to bottom, it was an absolute match. I'm like, wow, hats off to Zoom, because that transition was absolutely seamless.
Jeff,
pretty impressive.
just a minute. There's something that doesn't sound quite right there. There's something that must have happened between the two license holders for that to happen. Because
let me see if this is the quick answer. Guy's license was not yet formally dead. He prior to its actual, like, Zoom turned it off, he removed our accounts from his enterprise domain. So it was a removal, so we were no longer in that area. But I'm guessing that my recordings and settings still lived because his license wasn't actually completely turned off. He just knew it was coming. And so he started removing us. And so in the background, Zoom still kept those assets or settings like alive, but not reach. I couldn't have accessed them under a basic account. But the moment I found myself back into a new enterprise environment, everything was still kind of, if you will, my accounts linked to the settings, my accounts linked to these recordings, all those linkages came right back to life.
It just doesn't sound right, because if you imagine you've got two different companies, two different organizations,
Yep.
and an employee leaves from one and goes to the other, you'd be taking away information with him. So it must be something to do with the fact that you weren't in Guy's domain.
So my addition to their world is my unique email address. So their company domain is their company domain, but they can add a new user, which is in my case this, Zoom host at streamsharks.com. When they add that, which I am technically, as far as domain name goes, I'm an outsider to a degree, right? But I'm now tied into. But I also, when he added my address, it says, hey, I live someplace else, right? Like I had this other home. Now, if I was still in Guy's domain, Zoom domain, if you will, it would have let me know that, hey, if I accept this invitation to this new domain, here's the consequences, right? But I had already been removed from Guy's domain, that my actual, StreamSharks address. And what surprised me was that even though I'd been demoted from enterprise to basic, that all the linkages were ended up still completely intact when that same email address got added to Greg's domain. And it was like everything just lifted up and moved right over. So telling you, it's the real experience. The order was, Guy went to an account, my email address, that was, and I don't even use that as an email address. It's an email address that he used and I created for his use for this account, period. That's all it does. He removed me as a user that was attached to anything that he was paying for. And so like I was out of his world, and I was demoted to a basic user. Then I could have moved it just to me, like if I had a pro account or turned it into a pro account or whatnot. Some things would have moved, but not all of it, because the license doesn't allow access to that, even though the linkage to that much recording, like I have hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, like every morning I get messages that there's going to be recordings that get deleted because it's set for like 120 days or something. But instead, Greg put that address into his account. Therefore, my life began again in an enterprise account, and everything that was mapped behind the scenes quietly and inaccessible by me directly until I ended up in another enterprise licensed environment. Then I realized, and that's what I didn't know, is everything going to move? And every single thing, everything, settings, recordings, everything, scheduled meetings and webinars, everything transitioned seamlessly. And I just thoroughly impressed. So
I'm going to look into that, because that sort of scares me, because that means someone can work for me on my license, because I have a business license, and leave once he's finished the job and take away the material that he's produced for.
Well,
that sort of
I think
me.
the only difference is, a lesson learned from this then, with that now known exposed fear, don't ever add a user based on their provided email address, right? And so, the initial request way back when was, hey, why don't you go create an alias to your inbox? And I just created, I'm usually Jeff at streamsharks.com. I just created a unique alias, Zoom host at streamsharks.com, and Guy was the only one who ever received. That's the address to use. Tie it to an account. He tied licenses to that email address, and bingo. And I think you're right. The evidence is when he says, well, you're no longer part of my domain, whether it's a firing, termination, we're just done with the contract and it's friendly, whatever. Those things are linked to my address. And so if I end up under a license with the same capabilities or somewhere in between, I would guess I could have that data or those recordings or whatever. So I would say, lesson learned to not get into that that platform of nervousness or losing intellectual property or whatnot, is you always be the one that says, here's your account, this is your username, and let them go create their own password. But it's your account. So not only are you removing them from your Zoom account as a sub account, you remove them, you also can go delete that email account that you created or alias that you had created for them while they were working for you. I think that seems to be the lesson learned. And so it's like, but what if you wanted those assets? So they're leaving, but you want those assets. I think that's where, while they're working, I don't know if it's the perfect answer, but logically I'm putting it together. It's like if when they came on board, if you created on your email server a new email address for them for a Zoom account, they use that. Then you go, okay, that relationship is finished. Then I think you would want to create an alias to your primary email account. So everything ends up there, but it's a unique email address, right? So it's a new alias, which makes it a unique email address, which makes it possible to create a Zoom account, a new Zoom account in your enterprise account that, let me see. I have to think about that. I was going there, but I think I hit a stopping point there because the alias isn't a transition from their email to.
Yeah, Jeff, what I was going to say is that if you did let the employee go, in this case, basically you would just have to, in theory, with the Zoom account is just, and A, you're taking the email address away from them. B, reset that password for the administrator temporarily, so the admin can now go in and has full access to that account.
Yeah.
Again, you would have to do that on Zoom as well, unless there was some sort of trust set up between you and Zoom.
I'm thinking that I've heard in the past that when you delete an account with assets, that it gives you an opportunity to associate them with another account. It'd be worth some confirming research, but I'm actually pretty sure I've heard that. So you'd have that opportunity during deletion. Is like, well, do you want these assets to move to a new account then? Assign them to somebody else? I think that's true.
Yeah, but that's within your license.
Yeah. Therefore, the importance of it being your email address. Yeah. And I could actually, I could message Guy to confirm this is, hey, when you removed me, did it prompt you about my assets and settings? And he may have said no to it, right? He may have said, nah, just leave them associated with that, right? I don't know if he got that prompt because I was an outside email address or not, but that might be worth kind of confirming as well, because my guess would be that he may have said, no, don't do anything with the assets, just cancel this account. My guess would be he might have had that prompt, and but was still given the opportunity. So even if it was an outsider, when you removed it, but my question is have you had this experience yet, Robert, or are you just thinking?
No, I haven't even thought about this experience, and I've had situations where I've got subcontractors coming on and giving them access to do a job, and then they're leaving. And now what you're saying is, and I've never seen, I see the transfer occur. Actually, you're right that within the account you're allowed to transfer to a different account the assets. Yeah, but not. I haven't seen it as the option to leave these assets with the account that you are removing from your license. I haven't
Yeah, and I
seen that
wonder if
option.
that's like just verbiage. Like I wonder if what I experienced of this, super smooth, painless transition is not necessarily spelled out, maybe, right? So I think so these outside contractors, when you add them to be a licensed Zoom account, you're using one of their addresses that they provide you.
Correct.
Okay. So I would propose, because how much we, communicate and test things, I'll go create an alias and I'll give you that. You go create an account. Let's go create a meeting with a recording, do a couple of custom settings back there, and then delete my account after we finish that, and let's see what kind of prompts you get, what options you get, and so forth. I think it's super important to know, and
Yeah,
this much
I
later
also
in the
have
game.
this. Yeah, I also have this feeling too that there's the oopsie clause that Zoom might have too, which is, oops, I didn't mean to get rid of this account. So they actually might have, with Jeff's account as well in the background, without telling anybody, kept everything for so many days.
So if you stop paying your subscription and you ignore all the reminders that says your subscription's about to expire in whatever, 15 days, 10 days, now 5 days, and boom, it's gone. And you log in and you have a Zoom meeting and you realize now you're on a basic account, right? Because nobody deletes them. They just turn into a basic account. But you don't have access to all those recordings. And now you're a little upset. Well, it's your own fault. But if you resubscribe with that same email address and just make it a paid account again, you'll instantly have access to all those recordings.
I can confirm
for,
that's
I
happened to
believe,
me.
for 30 days.
That's happened to me. Mhm.
Yeah. So they do keep, the actual, like recordings intact for, I believe it's 30 days, and the linkages to them from, that account that's now a basic account. If you just invigorate the license to at least what it was or better, you'll regain access to that. So even if somebody's like super upset with Zoom and they just want to cancel them out of their lives, the most it's going to cost them is a 30-day subscription back to where they were, so they can download all their recordings if that's what they're after, and then just end it in 30 days. So there'll be a little bit of cost, right? But yeah, no, you're right. It's one of those kind of undescribed recycle bins.
That's a different case, Jeff, because
Oh, yeah.
I remember when that happened to me, it actually gave me back all of my planned meetings with all of the invitations. Everything was exactly the same.
Yep.
So I hadn't lost anything. But coming back to this moving from one account to the other, some time back, I forget his name, the gentleman in glasses who runs a big university Zoom account.
Oh, you're talking about Ottawa Frank?
Yeah, Frank.
Yeah,
he
Frank
mentioned that he's heard that Zoom is going to tighten down on giving licenses to people outside the domain that sorry, let me start this again. If you have an enterprise account, you won't be able to give licenses to anyone outside of the domain you've registered for that enterprise account. That's the statement he made, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I can believe I can believe that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because again, Zoom wants it to be, because again, I don't know if this is capable or not, but there is a potential that Active Directory, so if you're an Active Directory company, you could, if Zoom has that capabilities of syncing Active Directory accounts with Zoom, similar like they do with Teams and such, then, that could be.
But I think, I would tend to think there's probably a worthwhile discussion that would say, well, yeah, but part of this policy change, that we're talking about is because everything we've built up to this point supports it this way. Therefore, it's going to be way easier to limit the, domain, method of usage versus change the entire platform behind the scenes, And I mean, because that's like one change. It's a business procedure change for each license holder that says, hey, if Robert's bringing somebody on, now Robert has to go create a new email account for this, and then just send them their credentials for the email, because that's the email box, and until they establish access to that email inbox, because that's where the Zoom license invitation is going to end up when Robert then creates or adds that newly created email on his domain into Zoom and attaches a license to it. It'll email that, for them to accept it inside that new inbox. But then that gives you total control, Robert, to zap the Zoom account license, detach the license, and if you desire, kill the email account as well, if it's like long time severed, right?
Or too, Jeff, Robert could actually do this too, is that you temporarily give them like a Zoom related email account to your domain, and just once the contract is done, you just go in to Zoom and just disable that account in there for now, right? Or on the email server wise, change the password and they can't access anymore, right? There can be, it's a bit of an administrative nightmare per se, but again, if you have a true system in IT department, they'll want to be that specific. Right?
Well, I think there's stages of that. One, there's a big difference between deleting the Zoom account that Robert created 6 weeks ago for a contractor and detaching the license from that email address that Robert created, right? So if you simply detach the license, that just really kind of kills the access to the assets that were created while they were using it. If Robert were to then reattach a license to that same email address, those assets would show right up again. I don't know the timing of that. Under an enterprise license, how long do those live? Maybe they live forever. Maybe they die when the difference between detaching a license from an email account versus literally deleting the account. So now there's not even a basic account. So there's really nothing, I think, in relational database world, right? There's no primary ID to link to all these other child tables, which are recordings and settings and so forth. And so I think once you delete the account, it would make sense that that's when those assets literally kind of disappear, because the primary ID's gone away. I'm guessing to a degree, but the logic makes clear sense to me that I would expect that behavior to probably be quite true.
That would be an interesting question to guide. Did he delete you or did he detach your
Well, I'm pretty sure it was just a license detachment, because he told me, like, during the call we got on some part of the conversation is like, oh, well, I can turn it back on if you want me to. I kind of reattach a license. And when I logged into the client, it was a real account, but it was now a basic account, right? So he didn't actually like remove it. Otherwise it would have no longer had an association to Zoom, as the company. I mean, because it's just an alias from my domain, StreamSharks. And so it would the only reason it ever had an association to Zoom, the very first time it ever had an association to Zoom, was when Guy added it to his account, to his
No, that's not quite correct, Jeff, because you need to create the account in Zoom in order to attach it or allocate a license to it.
Well, he did. Yeah. So he created a user.
So he created it.
Jeff Widgren, with this unique address that I provided him. And then that sent out an invite to me that accepted the invitation, that then created this, relationship between, a Zoom account and that email address. So I think the moment if he would have literally deleted my user account inside his management panel, that would have actually, I mean, it would still be an email alias to me, but I wouldn't even be able to log into Zoom, I don't believe, even as a basic account, because there was no association any longer. So I think he just attached the license. But yeah, I can get some clarity. It just to, you know, kind of that firm confirmation of what happened, see if he recalls what he was prompted, you know, and what his answers were and so forth. I think it's really, really good knowledge. It's things we don't do. I mean, a lot of people will never see an enterprise management console and the dashboard and so forth, right? But those that do, it's still a practice, you know, moving people in and out, you know, frequently is not really a super common practice, right? You build it up one day and pretty much run off of that existing build with occasional changes. But so yeah, I think it would be great detail. That's what we've done in the Zoom test kitchen for 3 years now, is to kind of find, maybe it is documented, but I just say, we uncover the undocumented, you know. Let's see what the real behavior is, what's the real user experience, and so that we can help others out, you know, with accurate answers that have really been proven, not assumed. And too much of today's conversation has been, I'm thinking the logic would be this, and so we like to go absolutely verify. So, well, good stuff. Good thinking. Hey, you have a business account, right, Robert?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. All right. Well,
I'll tell you something that is interesting about the business account is I have a business account and I also have webinar licenses. And I don't know if you remember, I was having an issue where I had registered with Zoom and they'd upgraded my business account to 1080p, but I was having issues in the webinar to get 1080p. And remember, we tested it. We went on to about my time, 2 o'clock in the morning one time.
Yeah.
And that problem came back. And when I finally got to someone in Zoom, they told me that the fact that my webinar license is attached to my business account doesn't automatically mean that the webinar license is 1080p enabled.
I believe that. I mean, I like super easily believe that, because they're like totally separate, you know, products that you can bind the relationship, but where an account is an account is an account. Like, it lives in this Zoom domain if there's a sub account, right? But a webinar, man, you can give it to me today and David tomorrow and Mike, you know, the next day. You can move that webinar license. And so it really has to live with its own parameters. And that is an individual request to get a 1080 bump to the resolution in webinar. That's not enough, because that only delivers 1080 to the panelists, which is about, I mean, it's not that it's worthless, but it's not your audience. And so the other request is also enabling 1080 to the attendees. Because if you don't ask about that specifically, it will not happen. It'll be 360. It won't even be 720. It'll be 360. And so, yeah, I to a degree, that really kind of does make sense to me, but it's one of those things to actually think about that, you know, as a consequence while you're just adding a license. You'd think, yeah, I'm buying something new that's attaching itself to a 1080 account, and
it was not obvious to me, Jeff.
Yeah, no, I get it. I totally get that.
I struggled with that for a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it was ZoomISO that actually got me to understand that I'm not getting what I'm expecting to get. And then I started asking questions, and then they realized that, oh, sorry, I met a person who told me that you have to register the webinar license as well. Okay.
So you've been through it now. I mean, you in fact, you can confirm for everybody watching that you had to make two requests. Not that they had to be separate, but you had to ask for an attendance 1080 bump or attendees 1080 bump along with the webinar bump.
Well, when I got the webinar bump, I got the option in my license to enable to push 1080p 1080p to the attendees. So it wasn't something.
So
it's an
they
option.
turned on both. They didn't used to do that.
I don't
'Cause
know
no-
if they did that.
it-
I didn't request for it specifically. No.
Huh. That'd be an interesting find too, then, from maybe asking a help desk person. But because it used to be that, if you asked for 1080 webinar, they would shortchange you. And like nobody knew that was going to happen. And then they'd be screaming tomorrow after they got the license and they see that they got the 1080 webinar bump, that the attendees were still getting this 360 deliverable. And it's like, we were like, well, I've never personally had to make that request, but I do know you have to ask separately for the attendee resolution bump as well. It's because two different things. I'm not quite sure why, whether it's control or what, but I mean, I just don't know anybody. I haven't met anybody who wants a 1080 bump not to affect the audience. You know what I'm saying? I just like that. They are not making that request thinking that the audience is still going to be at 360. I mean, that's kind of an insane combination, but that's the way it used to have to be. And so maybe they've actually, internally been able to fix that in the sense that if they're going to grant you 1080, they just do it all the way through, because you got the checkbox in the back end that says, yeah, enable it, but,
Yeah.
Or in the scheduler actually, right? And you can enable it. So
And there may be some other thing there may be something else that comes to my mind now, that when I buy the subscriptions for webinars, I buy yearly subscriptions and not monthly subscriptions. And just looking at it from a business point of view, I think I as Zoom would be more open to giving someone with a yearly webinar license the 1080p than someone who just takes it one off for a month.
yeah.
But that's just an
Yeah.
assumption on my side. I don't know.
Yeah, it's one of those things. I know that during the pandemic there was a lot more scrutiny given to the special requests, if you will, to bump up from out of 360 to 720 or 1080. Now at least when you buy business, you're going to get 720 out of the box, and when you buy enterprise, you're going to get 1080 out of the box. But if you're business at 720, you can still request to get to 1080. And I don't know if they're just responding to that by doing it, or if there's still a little bit of scrutiny over who are you and what are you it was kind of based on who are you, how busy are you, who are you delivering to, was it government agencies or big IT, like, was it something that they considered worthwhile or could affect their image, in a positive way if they bumped you up to 1080. I don't know what all the scrutiny was. I just guess, but I think that hard scrutiny has, gone away, primarily because they've been able to scale up their infrastructure and it can support it. I mean, there was a reason they weren't giving it away. It would constrain their network in a big way in all their different data centers. So,
but they did ask me why I wanted that. That's for sure. So there was a filter there for some.
Yeah.
For internal.
So still a little bit of a business to 1080 request, which is really a kind of a product of enterprise, and I mean, things that make a difference, is, what are you delivering? You're a translation company, worldwide provider of, interpretation, and you participate in a bundle of feedback and requests to them that helps their product become a better product in time, right? Of what we are really looking for. And so I think, all those things are quite meaningful, and sometimes, it can be who, hey, just say, I know Andy, man. Do you know Andy? Yeah, sometimes it's people, but anyways, that's not always as easy as we might think, but all those things I think make a difference. I just know it's a little bit easier today. I mean, I think I was on a thread, David, what was that? Oh, Ecamm. It was an Ecamm thread. That's why I said David. It was an Ecamm thread, and somebody had asked about a bump, in resolution, and you could tell that some of the responses were from people of the old experiences, and I chimed in right after one of them, and I said, it's not the argument. You don't have to have an argument about this anymore. Just go ask them. They'll give you 720, and because they were just getting kind of aged feedback, which used to be perfectly accurate, but it, to go ask for a pro
what, Jeff?
account to 1080, now that's a job, but a pro account to 720 is a simple.
Oh, I got 1080 right away in the pro pro account. Sorry,
Pro,
I thought. But can I say also that half of the battle is getting it turned on, but the other half of the battle is using it properly, using it correctly, and so people complain in convention half the time they're just not using it correctly.
Well, I mean, you're 100% right. I mean, there's so many variables that, affect the success or non-success, right? I mean, the most basics that, some people have looked, or like, hey, I should be seeing it everybody at 1080. It's like, no, they don't even have a camera that can give you 1080 or the bandwidth or the CPU, I mean, like there's just bundles from the source that can cause it to, break down. And then, like even when it's like, side by side or 4-up or things like that, there's certain combinations that, drop. Because keep in mind, if we do David, do you have your Stream Deck handy to spotlight?
I'm not on anymore with OSC. I'm sorry.
Let's see if
Jeff, I don't mean to be nasty to David, but do you have your Stream Deck? He has an arsenal of Stream Decks.
Yeah. Well, I'm staring at two of them, but this one that I would switch Zoom stuff on is not looking very healthy at the moment. Something happened to it, but I'll do it manually.
What do you want?
I just want to create a 4-up of us, and well, before we do that, let's.
Oh, too late.
Let's all confirm that we are realizing, with a single spotlight, 1080, right? And so I can see that while I'm talking, because it's activated by active speaker, I'm sending 1080 out of my home studio. It also says I'm receiving 1080, but we really need to confirm that by asking Robert to actually speak to make sure that the activation as well stays at 1080. So go ahead, Robert.
Okay, I'm speaking now. I'm just looking. I'm sending 1080. I'm receiving 1080.
All right. So that even side by side, we're still at 1080. So, but I'm going to now. I'm literally, you don't see it. I could share my screen and show you, but I'll just tell you that I'm on a 2K monitor, and I'm shrinking my Zoom window. So all I'm doing is just making my video and your video, Robert, smaller, so like, does a smaller space, which is less pixels, really require 1080 at that point, and so I'm going to now bring my stats back up to the video, and I'm talking and I'm sending 1080. Now that makes sense because Mike or David, the recipients that are kind of not spotlit at the moment, they may have my picture big enough to actually, kind of tell the Zoom servers, deliver that 1080 feed down to that attendee, any one of the attendees, if they had me pinned or not or whatever. Let's confirm that it's not a theory. I'm pretty sure I'm pretty solid on this logic. So Robert, David, and Mike, please make sure that my video that I'm currently sending 1080, please make sure that my video is small on your screen. And
your video has been small all evening, Jeff, for me.
My video has been?
Okay. Yeah, because I have it.
Still says I'm showing 1080. Now I can't identify why. Now there are some quiet attendees in this meeting. I see Greg and Hasmuk, who I'm not like directly communicating with, but they might have my video larger. So,
Yeah,
Mike and David and Robert could shrink me down, and I'm
now you're sending 360.
Am I? Yeah. Now I'm
So
sending
am I.
180.
So am I. I don't know. Something happened.
So I'm going to guess that one of our quiet attendees, whether it's Greg or Hasmuk or whatnot, responded. They heard me, and maybe they responded and shrunk a window, because I mean, it's just that dynamic. So, but when
Jeff,
when we were in a side by side with me and Robert, go ahead, David.
Quick question though. Sorry. What this tells me, this does not tell me what you're sending. It tells me what I'm receiving, and everyone can receive something different. Yeah, you do. And that really ties. I mean, some people might say, well, why is it tied to active speaker? Well, it's tied to active speaker. Your statistics, right? Your received statistic is showing you the video resolution of the active speaker. That's the bond between the two. And this is where I was kind of heading, is I can do a side by side and a 4-up, or even the gallery. When it's tied to, even though you're on a 4K monitor in a gallery with 49 people, you're looking at the stats, and the stats say that when David is talking, I'm getting him at 360. What the heck? Well, active speaker is David only. It's nobody else. It's not the whole gallery that it's sending 1080. Everybody's video feed to me or you is independent. And then my client puts all those videos together in the gallery. I don't get sent the gallery. I get sent everybody's individual video. And so, when you get down to gallery view and then apply the active speaker, that's the resolution on your receive column that you're seeing, is the active speakers. When you say active speaker, I assume that when someone's spotlit, that means that they're called the active speaker. Yes? No, active speaker is absolutely a direct tie to audio. Now, so in most cases, the spotlit speaker, but if I spotlit you, but I was the one talking, that's then what I'm going to be receiving is your video quality, not the spotlit. I'm almost positive that's the case. So I've never tested that, but logic has it that has got to be the result.
We can try that, because I'm getting David coming in at 720 and I'm getting you coming in at 1080, Jeff. Yep. So there is a difference here. Yeah, and keep in mind, if you're receiving me at 1080, who's causing the 1080? Me sending it? It's not. The cause of the 1080, because the capability supports it and the license and so forth, is you. You've got my picture to a size that is asking the Zoom server for 1080 if you've got it. It's really probably asking for HD, because it's either going to be 1080 or 720, but it's asking for an HD feed. If you shrink my video down, then that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, then your receive of me drops instantly, because it's what you're asking for. It's not about what I'm sending. And so if you're seeing me right now at, let's say, 360 or whatever, it's showing up as, I'm telling you that I'm still sending 1080. Now, the reason I'm sending 1080 is because there's somebody in this meeting who is capable and asking for, because of the size of my video, they're asking for an HD picture, which is, in this case, it's not 720, it's actually 1080. And so it's all about what you're receiving. So it's really kind of, I think it's super important to understand that, like a gallery view is literally multiple video feeds that you're ingesting, putting the puzzle together, and your client takes on that load. But that's why Zoom is so incredibly good at being able to handle a ton of workload, if you will, because it's so well distributed amongst every attendee's computer. and then it just puts the puzzle back together quite dynamically when you make changes.
It's really, it does change. The stats change as I change the size of the window of you, Jeff.
Literally while you're dragging it, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can actually define where my screen is halfway, because it drops exactly at halfway. It does it with such precision. It's quite amazing.
Yeah. Let me see if I still have, I'm pretty sure I still have this wallpaper. I hit browse and Windows is not popping up. There it is, finally. Let's see. What did I call it? That's the real magic. But I'll find it. But I have, and I'll continue to look for here. I had this desktop wallpaper that had a 360 frame and a 720 frame. And I mean, we used to cover this a ton, early when none of us knew anything about. But when I learned how dynamically it adjusts video resolution, I got this wallpaper, and then kind of tailored it for my 2K monitor and those sizes. And my example was, hey, everybody, take a look at. I would share. It was more useful for me to share because it's on the recipient side when things change, right? It's what you're asking for. So I would, I'd have somebody kind of full screen spotlit, and then I'd have my stats window on top of it, and then I'd drag and just shrink it down, and you'd literally see the resolution drop in motion when you're resizing a window. It's just that dynamic and efficient, if you will. So, that's the deal. And I don't know how many different resolutions it stores or encodes on the fly, but we know it only keeps one HD, right? Either a 720 or a 1080 based on licensing and like mobile device presence management, right? So it might cause it to decide. But outside of that, I don't know if it like constantly maintains a 360, 144 or whatnot, or if it delivers that out on the fly based on usage. But anyways,
This is a tool that I use. You may find it useful, especially if you're using Canva. It's called Pixel Ruler. It's pixelruler.de, and you can pull it up onto your screen, and it'll actually tell you exactly. You can draw from one edge to another in
cool.
pixels, centimeters, or inches, whatever you want. And it's usually, I use it a lot in Canva when I'm trying to get things to the same size.
Yeah, I've done. Is it Canva or Photoshop? I think it's Canva. That like when you resize something, as you have it clicked and held and you're dragging it, the pop-up box at your mouse pointer actually is showing you the XY dimensions. I think it's
Canva does that, and Canva also, when you've got 2 or 3 objects that you're trying to place centrally, will show you the distance between them, etc. So yeah,
nice. Yeah, it does a great job with spacing and alignment and snapping. Kind of, it shows you all the potential snap zones, which most of the time is super helpful. Sometimes can be a touch annoying, but most of the time super helpful, because then you get spoiled with tools like that, and you try to build a composite shot in vMix that has 0 snapping. It just makes me angry every time, and so it those snapping features are big help for sure. It keeps things looking sharp. Because and you can. There have been times I've I've got 6 icons across, and I go, this is where I want the left one, this is where I want the right one. Select all 6 of them and space evenly horizontally, and it just perfect spacing between all of them. And you can do it vertically, and then you can align them to the top, right? And so I think it's based on the first one you select. then all the other ones, you so select after that and you say align top, then it just moves everything else up to that top or bottom or center to that first one that you had selected. They've done an incredible job of
Once
making
we
layout.
once we move on to the new Zoom, what was it called? The Andy and
Production studio.
it's production studio. That will help us with a lot of things. I realized that this week as well, when I lost one of the speakers and I was missing production studio, that would either just recalibrate and put the two people next to each other. If you've got something that's going through vMix or OBS and you've got
there's none of that happening, is there?
You've got to press the button to change that view.
Big time.
And
big time.
I really appreciated that. I can't wait to play with that toy.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, I haven't really pressed vMix, like on an input. Let's say I take an input and go to triggers, right? Because something happened, right? And so a trigger on an input has on completion, transition in and out, overlay in and out, audio triggers, countdown completed, and then there's a call connected and a call disconnected. But I think that's directly associated to vMix call. So if you can have a trigger response. So if it's a vMix call, that it looks like here, if I had a 3 up and they were all 3 vMix callers, that if I had triggers on each one of those vMix calls, I could tell that trigger if that call is it says on call disconnected. So if I have a disconnected call on that third panel to do this, which would be to switch to a 2 up. And so I think that's doable, but only within it looks like only within it being a vMix call, not just a video feed. It'd be nice to know that, if you actually lost the live video feed, to be able to trigger the same thing. So that'd be interesting. Yeah. We always have dreams of new features, don't we?
Yeah, but
for what it's worth, sorry, I was chatting with Andy before. Apparently on Monday, there's a big announcement coming from Zoom.
Nice.
He said it's linked to something in the release notes they were supposed to come out, but it was pushed back. But he said that's not the whole story. There's something more.
He's a big tease. I hope he's listening. You're a big tease. Hey, he's great. He's great though. He can stir up some good excitement with that kind of stuff and not give up anything he should give up too early. So that's all good stuff. Love that guy. But well, I must be mean he's back from his honeymoon if he's online chatting.
No, not yet. He was writing me from Italy.
Oh,
which is just terrible.
Leave him alone.
Terrible.
Oh, that's funny. That is so funny. Anyways, well, very good. Well, that's cool. That's good news. So Monday's going to be a big talk day, which means Friday will. Next Friday is that. I don't know, David. Do you know this? A week out, whether you can host the kitchen next Friday? I have a big setup I got to do.
Yeah, next Friday I can cover.
Okay.
I will put it in my calendar and block it out so nothing else gets in the way.
I'm not going to be here next Friday. It's Corpus.
Well, I'm not doing
Thursday. It's Corpus Christi on Thursday, so we're all shutting down for the long weekend.
What's Corpus Christi?
What's it called? Not Ascension Thursday.
It's a city in Texas to me. You know what I'm saying?
Corpus Christi is a specific holiday associated with the Catholic Church.
Oh, okay, very good. I'll have to look up that.
It is. I had no idea. That's really interesting.
Mm.
I also just thought it was a place.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, I think isn't it that one of the big ports where cruise ships go out of Texas instead of
so.
having to go all the way over to Florida? So, but I did not know it was a holiday, so I'll have to go learn some more. Well, good stuff, guys. Anything else? David, I'll try to set myself a reminder. I'll be setting up. I'll actually probably be at the house. I might listen in, but I'll still be at the house. But I have to load out the house to my car and then get it over to the building, and so I'll be in a spot. I'll launch it from my house and get you on, so it'll be
Perfect.
easier than some of our past experiences when I'm like in my car on my mobile phone.
Perfect.
But that'd be great. I appreciate that. Well, I think that's about it. Are you guys all getting my emails? Zoom Test Kitchen email, invites and so forth.
Yeah,
Those work. Any
those will work.
any thoughts? Look horrible. They work. Something else would make it better, more clear, easier. I don't know. Always interested in feedback. I've had I usually see like a 45 to 50% open rate. So about half of the 800 that get it, open it, so to at least glance and so forth. So it's been the most successful as far as being able to capture people, who, and it's all derived from it's 100% derived from they have literally been in the kitchen. They've registered to be here at some point. That's where those addresses come from. And so when new people, register from other, say somebody just tells them about it and they register with Zoom, then Zapier senses that new registration and puts it in, and Zapier recognizes that event in Zoom, a new registration, and pulls the data out, just a name and email, and sends it to MailChimp. And so MailChimp is my primary, like contact database. So, and that's the one that sends out has the designer for the emails and all that jazz. So does a pretty good job. I don't know what else. I mean, I know there's other products out there that do it, but MailChimp seems
we could spend a whole evening talking about Zapier and the things that you can do with that, because
Zapier is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's like the cleverest thing that I have come across that helps me deal with all of the APIs that all of these platforms have put out there.
Yeah.
I'm going to let you all spend the evening talking about that. I'm going to go talk to my wife about something else. Have a lovely weekend, guys.
You too, David. Take care.
Take care, David. Bye.
But you're right. They've dealt with the back end and they've put an interface on it, and they've created connectivity between two platforms who never even desired to be created or connected. I mean, to pull and push and create and the whole bit.
Jeff, that sort of amazes me. But what really amazes me is the fact that they constantly update to the changes in the APIs of the different platforms.
Absolutely.
I mean, the friends that I have that write API interfaces are just like sick of doing that sort of work, because these changes happen so often. Yeah. And the documentation is always far behind the change. So these guys are brilliant. They're so good.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty doggone amazing solution for sure. Pretty affordable. I mean, very affordable if you really leverage it. And I just barely tap it. Like when we finish this meeting, we end it. When I not only when I end it, but when I end it in the cloud, it starts converting the recordings. When those recordings have completed, that becomes a trigger to Zapier, and Zapier senses that, and I created those hooks, and then the custom content, and out of all the recordings that are in the cloud from this meeting, I said, hey, it's this link, and inserts that dynamic link, and then it spits out a new post to our Discord channel, which is just a channel dedicated to these recordings that are available after the fact. it is on YouTube. You can always play that back on YouTube, but what you won't get on YouTube is the attached closed caption file. You won't get the ability to see the chat live. You won't be able to see the full transcript and so forth. And so and you can actually, because it's done a speaker view and a gallery view and share. I like that. That looks good. And I love that red behind there. And it has those combinations when because it's a Zoom playback, right? So I do have to go to the portal and share the video. I haven't found a way to automatically do that, but I just tell it, share it, knowing that Discord post is going to get posted. But outside of that, it's a hands-off deal. But it ends up being the Zoom playback player, right? And it lets you in the player change as if you were in Zoom from gallery view to speaker view. It's like, that's amazing to me, because that's literally changing playback from one video file to the other, but right in sync. It's like fantastic. So,
and it also allows you to select the language if you have interpretation, which is super cool for that player that they have.
That's yeah. See, I don't play in that world much, so even on playback there, it's captured all those different language. Wow, that's incredible. That's amazing. Yeah, I mean, it's a rich experience. There's no question. It is. It's a rich experience. It just really depends on what your playback audience wants and needs. And I just one day I wanted to leverage Zapier with something that I could get, and that was one. It's like, yeah, that would work, and it was completely doable. So it is one that I went for that day. But yeah, it's kind of, I mean, Zapier's kind of just, it's almost like the feeling I used to get, 25, 30 years ago, going to the computer store that had, you could build it from components, and it had bookshelves upon bookshelves. So, all the manuals and so forth. I mean, I used to just love shopping in those. And Zapier is pretty similar to me right now anyways. It's just, I just love seeing, like, what can I do from this vendor to that vendor, and just kind of shopping and trying to identify, it's not always driven by something I want to do. Sometimes I'll just go shop left side, right side and see if I go, wow, I didn't think about that, but that would be pretty phenomenal. So
and they're also very, very responsive when it comes to issues. Because I had a problem and they dealt with the two parties involved and didn't leave me as the middleman, which
Wow.
I dreaded. So they're really good with that as well.
That's impressive. Customer service is highly important for sure. And I always hope that they have a sustainable revenue model so that I can continue to benefit from their services, because quite the platform. So, well, very good, gentlemen.
Jeff,
I
just
think,
Jeff, just a
Mike.
quick question. Did you send email today or no? Did you send out an email today?
Yeah.
You did.
Yeah,
Okay,
this morning, Central
Oh.
Time. So this morning, probably, I don't know.
I got it
9-ish or-
7 hours ago.
Yeah.
I did not get it. Yeah, I
Let's
do
see. Meeting
on occasion, but I
registration,
didn't.
Greg. So my MailChimp notification of sending it was at 9:14 Central Time this morning.
I got it at 16:14, so the minutes are the same.
Yeah. And
Okay.
then, so you're
I'll
saying you
double-check.
didn't get it, Mike?
Yeah, I'll double check my spam. Sometimes I
Well,
get to.
that, and I'll make sure that, I mean, have you received it in the past?
I have.
Okay. Because I can,
I have.
I'll look in the database, MailChimp database, and just confirm that the right email address is in there for you too. Let's see.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'll try to do a fuzzy search versus having you call out your email. I mean, I guess if you want to type it in the chat, you can, but is it going to be Mike or Michael?
I think it's just gonna be Mike.
Okay. I'll look up all the mics. I have a Crosstracks address.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Yep,
On
it's in
occasion,
there.
I notice MailChimp will do that, but yeah, I've had other people do that to me too, but that's fine. I'll check my end too.
Trying to see if I haven't dug for this before, but see if there's like a log. Yeah, it says. So yeah, today, June 2nd, says the email was sent. We sent the email named such and such to you at 9:14, and it wasn't followed up with any other activity such as a bounce or anything like that. So
Huh,
it
okay,
must
good.
be in there. And it would
Yeah.
come from Jeff at ZoomTestKitchen.com.
Right.
It actually comes from 2 users.
Really?
Yeah, it comes from Jeff at ZoomTestKitchen.com via Gmail mcsv.net.
Interesting.
Yeah, for me, it's via our domain name.
Well, so it's naming the delivery server, it sounds like. Is that because
Yeah.
it's saying we're
Yeah,
sending
for
this
me.
through this SMTP server named something,
Yeah.
which makes
Yeah.
sense because whether that's because they're sending it out, I don't know. Maybe they're sending it, they know that I have my Jeff at ZoomTestKitchen.com is a Gmail account. I don't know if it comes back and gets that and knows it and then uses it. I mean, they'd have to be a known entity to be able to relay mail send through somebody else's server. And I would imagine
Yeah,
that
interesting. The last
yeah.
one I've got from you, Jeff, was on the 5th of May.
5th of May. Yeah, I don't know. It's not
Before
showing
that,
up as blocked or bounced or anything in MailChimp. So I don't know if
okay.
let me try to just send you a direct mail real quick. I'll do that 2 different ways. I'll send Mike.
Yeah, but I've got one on the 5th of May, but it came from Zoom, from the zoom.us domain and not from you directly, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't have a zoom.us. I mean, I don't have a actual like
No, it came
Zoom
from
address or.
Oh, sorry, this is the confirmation that I got.
And if it was like from registering,
It was from registering. Sorry, my mistake.
Yeah.
The other one that I've got on the 5th of May came via MailChimp app.net.
Yeah. So, Mike, I just sent you one from Jeff at Stream Sharks specifically, and now I'm going to send you one from Jeff at Zoom Test Kitchen to see if it's, somebody's blocking from a specific address.
Yeah. I'm watching.
I haven't sent the Test Kitchen one quite yet.
Mm-hmm.
This is from there. Okay, now it's all set up for that. All right, so now I've sent the one from Jeff at Zoom Test Kitchen as well. Now this is straight out of my Gmail client here, not MailChimp.
Mm-hmm.
Listen, guys, I'm going to leave you. I'm just totally gone. The heavy
You've
weeks.
hung in there longer than I thought because you were tired when we started.
I was. I'll be very honest. I was.
yeah. No, you.
But it's been good stuff.
But yeah, always good to connect. Yeah, go get some rest, my friend. Always good to connect.
And see you in 2 weeks' time, and have a good event next week, Jeff.
Sounds good. Thanks, Robert. Take care.
Bye, Mike.
Dobranoc, Robert.
Dobranoc.
No email yet?
I got a test kitchen one.
Oh, you did get the test kitchen one.
Oh, no, I actually got Stream Sharks one I got.
Okay. So I probably sent the test kitchen one, maybe, let's say, 60, 90 seconds at the most later.
Okay.
Are you behind a company managed email server?
No, we're actually using Gmail as well.
Okay.
And I just got Zoom Test Kitchen.
So you got those. Huh. So right click on the Jeff at Zoom Test Kitchen one in the Gmail client and select find emails, from Jeff Widgren.
Okay. Yep. Oh, hold on. Get over there. Add to contacts to make sure it is in there. All right. Open detail view. Nope. Not that one. Okay. Yeah. Okay. It came in as it should. Oh, interesting. Huh.
Weird.
Yeah. Yeah. It seems that on occasion, and again, sometimes we get that too, because we also use it for our dealers as well and such. The MailChimp, that on occasion won't be a bounce back, but it just won't make it through for whatever reason. And sometimes I've had people put in my personal one and my business one, and sometimes the personal one will get it, not the business one, and sometimes the business one will get it, not the personal one. But yet it's coming from MailChimp. It's like, well, inconsistent. I don't know if it's MailChimp system or they're checking something or.
Well, so I'm going to say test message from MailChimp. So from their database, I can send a message. So that's where I'm sending it from now. That's from Jeff.
Oh, yeah. FYI, we're still on YouTube, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably, we're thinned out enough. Let's put an end on this show and I'll be right back.